the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week, buddy, pal, rapper extraordinaire, and oh yeah, by the way, he puts in AV systems. Mr. Phil Cordell, how are you, brother?
Hey, great, Tim. Thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here.
Also with us, daylight person extraordinaire, not Taekwondo. What do you teach? What?
I teach Muay Thai, yeah.
Muay Thai.
Yeah, there you go.
Taekwondo was in there somewhere. Mark Coxon, how are you, sir?
Good, Tim. Thanks for having me.
AV Phenom, at AV Phenom. I'm gonna take him to task over a blog he wrote recently about who owns the code, but that's the programmer
good.
side.
Nice surprise, by the way, Tim. Thanks for that.
Programmer side of me. So, also with us is Mr. Wizard himself, Paul Zealy from Harman International. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. I mentioned the wizard part because Paul is jumping on a jet plane here really quickly to go on to ISE, and part of his festivities at ISE, you get to ask the wizard anything, and he is said wizard. So, also, last but not least, Mr. Terry Coffey from The Raper. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks, Tim. How about yourself?
Good. It's Friday. It's 1 o'clock Central. In 24 hours, I jump on a plane myself to head to ISE in beautiful Amsterdam. So, here we go. First up, so this is a rumor that was starting probably about a month or so ago. And if you're watching the screen, I'll throw the story up here. So about a month or so ago, I got 2 different phone calls from folks, and neither one would confirm or be on the record, so there was no point in writing a story about it. That, hey, Control 4 might be buying somebody, right? And then it was somebody, part of that was also that somebody might be buying Control 4, but that obviously was not the case. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I guess the best way to put this, yesterday, a bunch of folks in the media and on the Twitterverse and on the Facebooks got this announcement: Control 4 acquiring PackEdge device and software, a leader in advanced home networking. This is obviously a press release. But here's the thing, guys. It was. I'm not going to say it was shocking, right? First of all, Control 4 is a publicly traded company, right? So there's a couple of ways that you can keep investors happy and people who own your stock happy. One is to grow through market share, and another way to grow is through acquisition, right? Mark, we're going to kick it off with you here. What does this say about Control 4, and is this a good move on their part?
I think it's a good move. I mean, Control 4 uses a variety of different technologies, obviously, to control things within the house. They use some Zigbee protocol or Z-Wave. They're compatible, obviously, with Wi-Fi. There are devices on the network. They just came out with 2 new controllers for the home, got rid of their old stuff. I think it's a good thing. I think it helps them manage devices remotely better if they have a window into the network and they can control that network a little better. It gives them, I guess, an advantage over somebody like Savant that's maybe not selling that switch and those Wi-Fi routers and has a chance to manage that through the home control system, right? So I was a Control 4 dealer in Arizona for quite a few years, so I might be a little partial to that. For me, this was a little surprising, only because kind of the rumor in the space for a long time was Control 4 wasn't in this business for the long haul, that they really just wanted to build a business to sell. And to see them putting money into another business and making their business bigger, I think may go a little ways to kind of dispel that rumor that they're not here to build a new control company, but just to be acquired by someone else.
That's a really good point, dude, is the fact that because you're right. There was that was one of the, especially when they went public, right? That was one of the people who were against them going public were like, well, they're just trying to, make a not make a quick buck, because nobody in this business makes a quick buck. So,
Sure.
Mr. Cordell, from your standpoint, what does this mean? From a control standpoint, also is from a business standpoint.
Yeah, I think Mark hit on it in terms of being able to remote in. I mean, that's, having that window into the network is a huge plus that Pack Edge really did beautifully and elegantly. So I think it's a huge win for Control 4. And if they're looking to get bought by somebody, maybe Crestron would buy them so they could come out to Cedia. Who knows? They need something to show at the home show.
Wow.
Just saying. Too easy.
Right.
From a business standpoint, you're absolutely right, though. Acquisitions and mergers, man, is that's something that you got to keep an eye out for, and it's an excellent way to diversify your product offerings. And so I think this is like a match made in heaven that puts them ahead of all the other control manufacturers that don't have that leg up from the networking standpoint, because as we all know, everything's on the network now, and more devices are piling on by the day. So,
right.
Yeah.
Let's get a network expert on, Mr. Zeely. Both of these guys have made really good points about this, giving Control 4 a leg up when it comes to networking stuff. Was this a good move on their part?
I think in the market that Control 4 lives in, which is the home market, it's absolutely a good move, because for their stuff to work, it has to work well on the network, and to be able to limit it out and provide that network environment for the home that's being built. It makes a lot of sense. It also gives them a really good base to get into what's going to be the really hot part of the whole home automation IoT, which is going to be controlling the gateway. So Pack Edge has a number of network control products and things that will allow them to start to unify how various devices are managed on multiple networks. So with what Pack Edge already has, they have a way to start building IP to Zigbee gateways that can securely allow you to get into the home and not force you to be reliant on external services. And that's going to be the big key in that market, because as well as what Control 4 has already done within apps, they'll be able to unify. Because I have a lot of home automation stuff, and it drives me crazy to have to switch app to app to app. And so this will give them a chance to become that unifying presence glue to bring things together, and will really jump them up in that space if they play it right. That being said, even combined, they're tiny against some of the forces that are getting into that space. So even to be acquired, they're going to have to bulk up. A $30 million company is not a attractive acquisition to a Google or an Apple or some of these companies that are getting in. They want to buy a $300 or $400 million company. So even if they're trying to get acquired, they're going to have to bulk up to really get that top dollar company that wants to acquire them.
Okay, so hang on for a second, because you're right. Apple and Google both are trying to make inroads into the home space. Not that either of them are hurting for money.
Right.
So they have a chance, and you're right. They're typical, more successful, not more successful company, but more market cap companies. But could possibly another company then, if I don't know. I'm going to say Crestron, but Cisco or another networking company capture them, or does that not make any sense?
No, they absolutely could. The big issue, and it was strange because I never really thought about it, but I've looked at companies and said, gee, that would be a great thing just to acquire into Harman. And Harman doesn't want to buy companies that have a $20 million. It's a lot of work for a large company to buy a company. So they want to bring in maximum. And there are thresholds that, and I don't know where they exist within various things, but they don't necessarily suck up smaller companies. And if you're looking at the mass consumer market, I mean, Control4, as large as it is within the AV thought of the home automation market, in the mass consumer market, it's still tiny. And so I think bulking up and becoming a company with a $100 million valuation actually will make them more attractive to be bought, as well as they've picked up a significant intellectual property portfolio here, which is going to make them more attractive for acquisition, if that is what they want to do.
Yeah, if that's what they want. But I Phil and Mark both made really good points about the fact that it kind of solidifies their network acumen, I think.
Well, and it has to be. They have to do that because it's bad enough going into a corporate space that has professional discipline. You don't necessarily want to support every home router and switch set and goes, because all the customer ever says is that control system doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what are you using? Oh, I'm using this D-Link hub that's been working flawlessly for the last 18 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And with their new line of controllers and things, they're really focusing on streaming, not only streaming music services, but also streaming local collections and things like that. And when you're starting to tout that you stream media through the house, you want to be able to make sure that the media is streaming properly, and the only way to do that is to have a good network in place. So,
right, and they can just say, if you put in our network, it's going to work, and it becomes very easy on tech support to say, we'll give you better support if you put in our network switch, because we'll understand the end-to-end environment.
Yeah, and you could even have drop-down QoS settings per port based on what's at the other end on that node.
Yeah, and you have templates, you have standard ways of doing it, and in the scheme of things, it's not. Chances are a home automation system is going to buy some level of network anyway, and it becomes a single point of purchase for the customer, which is always attractive.
Sure.
Absolutely. Terry, real quickly, let's talk about how to roll these two companies together. The fact that Control4 is publicly owned, and you've got the task now, if you're the folks that are inside Control4, of rolling these two known properties together. How do you do that? We've lost Terry. Terry. All right, we'll get him on the next one.
He's deep in thought.
He is deep in thought. Well, all right, we'll get him on the next one. Up next, another acquisition, real quick. InFocus is acquiring a video solution provider, Avastar. So here's a question for you on this one. I guess it's the same question, Phil. I'll start with you here. What kind of sense does this make for InFocus to pick up a BTC company?
I think it makes fine sense. We sell a boatload of Mondo pads. They've got endpoints out there, and so if they can, kind of roll out an offering that lets you incorporate, any of your devices into their environment, I think that's a win for them. There's just so many companies out there in that space right now that, I don't know how they're going to differentiate themselves, honestly, from Pexip or Videxio or from any of the other companies that are doing exactly what this, looks like it does, per the press release. So I'm very interested to see how their marketing picks up behind it. And I think that because they've got their foot in the door in so many conference rooms, across America, that they've got, a leg up in terms of pushing this product out to people, in the enterprise where maybe they don't already have something rolled out, but they're, I hate to say late to the game, but there's a lot of large companies that already have all this stuff figured out. So I hope it works out for them. We'll see.
Yeah. Paul, same kind of question though, but Phil makes a good point. Is the fact that there are a lot of companies that already do this. Now, That's not to say that another company can't come along and develop something, bigger, faster, stronger, or acquire somebody that does it bigger, faster, stronger. So does that kind of feel what InFocus is doing?
Yeah, I would argue that nobody's figured it out yet. There's a lot of 90% solutions. There's still that grand unified question, which comes up to the point now that when I'm having a meeting, I've got a 5-minute negotiation as to whether it's going to be WebEx or Google Hangouts or Skype or everything else as we're negotiating through platforms. So within companies, there's definitely ways to go. Avastar is highly interoperable, maybe not to maybe the PEXIP level, but they support Citrix, Same Time, all of these various distribution internal things. So and handle multipoint better than some of those do. So it becomes something in the conference room that can handle your GoToMeeting or your Same Time or your WebEx or these various solutions. And quite frankly, InFocus has to continue to diversify and grow, if for no other reason than nobody's making any money in projection, and they have to find where this business is going to go and put a value add onto their display type technology, because otherwise they'll just be consumed by commoditization. We're beyond the point where there's a differentiating features within projectors. They're good enough. There's a race to the bottom in InFocus's market. So what they're doing is trying to refocus that conversation back on the application rather than just on, I need a 1080p projector with 5,000 lumens. And they've done that well with the Mondo Pad and with some other things, which have really been able to hold their value proposition. So I think it's probably good, and it's probably good for Avastar too, because I wouldn't want to be that size of a unified communication video conferencing company in the world of giants. So it gives them a way to leverage those customer sets that are either using Avastar or that are using the InFocus and go. And I think you're going to see a lot of this consolidation in areas as the big players start to take notice and come in. This could be a shot across the bow against the Microsoft Surface Hub. Seriously, I mean. Okay,
but here's the thing, and I'm not. I'm not being hateful here.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it's going to come out eventually, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah, but that's Microsoft's MO. But they did that. They did the exact same thing with Lync. Microsoft thinks it might want to get into a market and makes an announcement just to put the market on hold for 2 years while they think about it. Yeah. Lync was over 2 years after I went to comprehensive Lync training before anything came out, because Microsoft was thinking about taking a run at the voice over IP market, and they just decided, we're Microsoft, we can put the whole world on hold until we decide we want to be in this market by making an announcement. It's a standard strategy for them.
Tim,
they did the same thing in the web browser market.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say this was my whole take on the Infocom Avastar acquisition. This is what happens when you don't ship, right? What happens when you announce a product and you don't ship is you give all your competitors a chance to catch up. Because the main value proposition that Microsoft Surface Hub is bringing from a technology standpoint is, hey, look, everything lives in this box. It's not third party. Lync is integrated in. We own Lync, we own the Surface Hub. We own Office, we own the Surface Hub. All these things are integrated into the box, and the box is going to be a one-size-fits-all. Here's an appliance, well, sorry, 2 sizes fits all if we can ship the second size at some point. But a 2-size-fits-all.
I'm shipping the first size, so.
Solution, right? So they have this piece and they have this play, but when you don't ship, and I worked for IBM, so I understand some of this too, Paul, definitely, that a lot of times you do this R&D, you go out and you put out these announcements, you say you have this technology. What IBM used to do was license it to Compaq and HP, put a 2-year window on when they could start using it so that IBM could get it to market first. And then what they would do is inevitably not get it to market first. So they sold all their R&D. The other company beats them to market with their own product 2 years later, and then everybody's calling you going, do you have this? And you go, we invented it, but we're not shipping it for 6 months, right? So it's a major, major problem. But this is what happens when you announce a product that you don't ship. You give these guys the chance to go out and make these acquisitions. Now when Surface does ship, and they go, oh, well, ours is all integrated in. And MondoPad goes, well, so is ours. And guess what? If you don't want to use Link, you can use Hangouts, or you can use this, because Avastar has a Link interoperability platform already. So if somebody wants to use Link, go, no problem. Ours does Link too. Avastar's been doing Link for X amount of years before it was even called Link, right? So here it is. And I think that's what they're doing.
That's actually a really good point, is the fact that you've got all these guys that God love Microsoft. I mean, I wish them the best. I really do. But it's a really good point. You're giving it's almost like you're showing your hand, right, before you're ready to deal in. I mean, it really is unfortunate. So,
but also one of the big things that they do is, and where I see this doing it is, when Avastar and Infocus is in there, they are going to have to be selling against the expectation that Surface Hub will ship someday.
Okay, that's great.
Whereas if Microsoft didn't have something, but it's a deal killer. It really is.
Time out. I got three manufacturers on. If Terry's having some audio issues. Okay, I love you guys, right? I God love you. Milestone and Draper both are underwriters. If you show me something at a trade show and I ask you when it ships and you say either eventually, next quarter, or next year, I'm leaving your booth. Okay? It's not happening. Vaporware, trade show wear, whatever you want to call it, the expectation is not worth it. Now, yes, from a marketing standpoint, I get the whole idea we're first to market or whatever. You're not first to market unless you're shipping it. Sorry.
Unfortunately, you don't have that the mentality of the IT people who would just assume everything was Microsoft, and if they have an expectation, they're going to not put in another platform while they're waiting for Microsoft. And Microsoft does this over and over and over again.
All right.
Yeah, and I would agree with Paul on that. The advantage that Surface Hub has in the market is that they have business relationships with companies that are Microsoft partners. And if you're an AV dealer that has the access to Hub, you have access to clientele. That's not my dog, I promise. You have access to clientele that you didn't have access to before. And that is a business advantage in the space. But from a technology standpoint, this really catches Infocus up.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Infocom and their standards. Let's see if I can bring up this story here before I screw something else up. Infocom has released a cable standard. What's interesting about this is I actually got a call a month ago from an old friend of mine and said, hey, is there a standard out there for cabling? I'm not making this up. This actually happened. And I said, well, as luck would have it, they're working on it. It hasn't been released yet. And what happens 2 or 3 weeks later, this comes out. It's a standard on cable labeling. All right, let's be clear here. According to the article here, quote unquote, consistent, clear labeling of interconnected cables which serve as the core of integrated systems is very important. John Bailey of CTS, the Vice President of Technology for Whitlock, he's also the chair of the task group that did this. So here's the thing, guys. This is a standard based and built for Infocom, right? This is for the folks, the members, the CTSs, the CTSIs, even the CTSDs out there. So it's a standard for cable labeling. I actually like it, and I know it's weird. It's a standard, and I get it, and there's thousands of standards. However, there are very few as frustrating things as going into a job site when somebody else has done it, and let's say trying to figure out where this cable that is or that cable goes to without toning it out, right? Yes, you can tone it out as long as there's no crosstalk, as long as it's not laying over a ballast on a light, right? There's all sorts of ways that toning can screw you up. So, Mr. Zealy, we'll start with you here. So what do we think about the cable labeling standard?
I am all for it. I just happened to be on a job site last month where I had to crawl in behind a rack, and I looked and said, "Oh, great! Every cable is labeled." And I looked at it, and the labeling was what it plugged into on the end where the plug was. So I had no ability to figure out what was on the other end of the cable. So I've looked at this a little bit. They came up, and because it's an Infocom standard, not an ANSI standard, they were able to do it in 9 months instead of 4 years, which is, I mean, it's really good. So, and this is the first Infocom standard since they started doing standards that they didn't bring in through the ANSI track. So that gives me a lot of hope for other standards like this that are peculiar to the industry, and they have what all the options are. So it can be spec'd into the job that you're going to put near end, far end, cable type, and anything else you want into it. And it, you know, I am always for standards because it eliminates confusion in what you're getting out of the job, and it keeps me from having to write 20 pages in the RFP because I can say we'll meet, Infocom standard this with options 1, 3, and 5.
Okay, so hang on for a second. You said something there. I want to clarify. So this is not an ANSI standard. Why is that important, and why did you say you hope they do more of them?
Well, ANSI standards are broad across everything. So if you were going to go with an ANSI cabling standard, you would have to bring in the unified standard for cabling. And when you're dealing with ANSI, you're also dealing with ISO. So it becomes an international standard, so it has a very long review process. And there are things within the AV industry that don't necessarily need a strong international standards board behind them. They can be shorthand. And if ANSI wants to take its cable labeling standard, which is huge and comprehensive and includes everything in the world, and bring this in, that's fine. But if I was, sometimes even if this is considered an interim step, being able to get it done in 9 months provides a lot of value to the market, instead of waiting for 4 years for a standard. I had some need on the Infocom ANSI 2003 standard, and they said, "Oh, that's perfect. We're updating it." And I called the person who was in charge of it and said, "Oh, this is good. I want to know about the updates." He said, "This is perfect. The committee's all going and everything else. We will have our first request for comment by Infocom 2017. I'm like, "Well, that doesn't help me in May. Thanks."
May of this year. So.
Is that the audio coverage standard?
No, it's the integration standard. Okay. So I don't remember if it's 2003-1, but I had some needs within the needs analysis process, and they're looking at updating some of those portions, and specifically to bring in more network and some other things. But because it's a standard like that and has committee and international, it's a very long process to do anything.
Mr. Coxon, from as a not manufacturer but also former integrator, what do you think about a cabling labeling standard?
I don't know anybody who wouldn't be for one, right? I mean, I think we've all walked into job sites when things were a mess and you couldn't figure out what was plugged in where, like Paul just said. I mean, we used to go in and clean that up all the time. I think there are a couple things with the standard. I don't know if everybody read the standard. One is that it's a standard, but somewhat not of a standard, right? Because if you define the initials by which you define signal type, right? So if I want to say all my speaker wires are S's, and they're number, speaker, and then number 2, and then it's plenum, like an S2P, like they show in the example, then that's fine. And then if another person wants to say, well, in my system, speaker wires are audio, A2P. I guess it's not a huge deal because you're going to be referring to a plan set that actually has a key that tells you what those are. It's better than...
And see, that right there is the key, right?
Yeah. I mean, going into that key, I think I really liked... there were some secondary pieces. That's the primary label that they say needs to be on every single wire, right? And it can't be written on there with a Sharpie. It has to last at least the length of the wire. I like that too. You got a 10-year warranty on the wire. You got to use labels that are going to last 10 years because that's just part of the thing. They even describe the font and make sure they're right direction. Everything's facing the right direction. Everything's not one's upside down in relation to the other. Those things are all great. But one thing I liked was an idea in the secondary piece, which were optional, unfortunately, but was a to and from. And this is source and sync. Having a secondary label that just describes source and sync very quickly. There was another idea to put the wire type on there. I'm of the mindset if you're in the back of a rack and you're touching a wire and you don't know it's an HDMI cable, you probably shouldn't be touching the rack. You shouldn't have to have a label on it to tell you it's an HDMI cable. And if it's something that's jacketed, it probably already has a manufacturer's printed, 22-4, Cat 5, Cat 6, 350 gig, whatever, printed on that jacket somewhere anyway to find that out. But I like that secondary idea of source and sync as a best practice for a company. If I was running an integrator, I'd want to do that just so if I have a guy, I don't even have to worry about finding the key, right? For the most part, if I know source and sync.
Or if you're an integrator, you'll probably have the same key, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's your job, you have the same key.
Sure, yeah. So I think that's great, and I heard I think anybody who isn't adopting this really isn't in the business of providing long-term AV services. I think a interview that you had, Tim, with Yorktel with Craig McCormick because they got integrated of the year and said they don't want to take a job where they don't get the service contract. Obviously, if you're going to service a system, you're going to want to adopt a standard like this, right? It just makes your job easier. Going back in there, I'd say the only other one piece of commentary that I have is that this is an Infocom standard written for Infocom people, which is awesome. I think it's great that we cut the death by committee out of it by 3 years. I think that's a great thing. I would argue that there's probably a reduced cost in creating a standard like this because of ANSI, and that this would be a standard that would be awesome to release to non-members without charging them $60. Because honestly, there are a lot of guys out there that aren't Infocom members that are out doing jobs, and a lot of times those are the jobs we're going and fixing. Giving them a free standard like this to just make their business run a little better may make our jobs easier in the long run too. And if we don't have any type of ANSI fees and extra cost involved there, just some volunteers that are doing Gaiman's work for Infocom, maybe this would be one you could offer up at $0 for people that even aren't Infocom members.
Yeah, almost like
just an idea,
best practice type thing.
And I don't know what the plans are, but that makes sense. I believe ANSI requires them to charge for standards because ANSI does.
Mm-hmm.
So being a guy who buys a lot of ANSI and ISA standards, I don't think that Infocom can get away, and this may be something that they release more widely because they can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say I think it frees them
out there. It could be adopted, wire. Yeah, Mr. Cordell, what think you?
Yeah, man. I feel like we're having another AV industry FUBU moment. It's for us, by us. And we don't have to go through the rigors, as was specifically noted, in that article. I happen to have it because my designer, the day it came out, came and dropped it on my desk. One of our design team, and yeah, I mean it's it's great for those of you who haven't seen it. There's a good-looking label. You want to get artsy with it? Maybe put it in the lower right or left-hand corner? No. Big A. No. Why would you think that would be appropriate at any time? Yeah, I mean these guys, knocked it out of the park. It's always a good idea to have standards. I think as integrators grow, I mean, we started out like a lot of integrators as a small company with basically just the source to sync. I mean, yes, we had somebody doing line drawings, but might not necessarily have the need for a full key, but as we've continued to grow, that's just something that comes along with the territory. Needless to say, we're all hoping that the consultant, every consultancy firm out there jumps on this, because even within, from consultant to consultant, sometimes we'll see some different nomenclatures, and so that would really help push it out into the industry if everybody gets on board with like that.
Real quick question. We're hitting up against time here. So if a consultant specs out a nomenclature, do you follow it, or do you ask for a revision to use your own nomenclature?
We, typically follow theirs and kind of just fall in line with where they get, and we're a mid-size, does Whitlock or AVI-SPL, I mean, do they have to do that? Probably not. They probably say this is how we do it, because they're out there at the forefront of the industry, and that's great for them, But a lot of times, we'll kind of go with the flow, and again, as a growing, evolving company, it helps us get a lot of different looks at ways that things are done in the industry. Ideally, it all syncs up, and we're all on the same page eventually. But it's always good to know the various ways that people do it, so that when you come behind another integrator in the field and they've got some wacky numbering scheme, you can decipher it.
All right. Well, the other thing is we're getting ready for ISE next week, and one of the things that Infocom has planned is another one of these. Paul, the rack building. They're doing a rack building standard. So again, another for us, by us. We'll see how that one goes. So, all right, gentlemen, that's going to hit it. We're going to pack up the studio here and head to Amsterdam. Mr. Coxon, thank you, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
People can find you at obviously at Daylight Milestone, but I also find your writings, which you had one about code and who owns it at Rave Pubs.
Yeah, and I appreciate you running out of time before you.
Screens. There are no coding screens. It was a very nice article. I just disagree.
Yeah, well, good. That's fine, and I would encourage you to comment on it or write a counterpoint that I could share at AVPhenom on Twitter.
All right, I may do that. How do people find you in Milestone or wherever else?
Yeah, so mark.coxon@milestone.com or at AVPhenom on Twitter.
All right, very good. Mr. Zealy, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I will see your happy face next week in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I will be doing all kinds of stuff. If you're heading to ISE, I'm doing several Infocom sessions, including the Quiz the Wiz, which I think is trending on hashtag Quiz the Wiz. It's essentially the happy hour entertainment. It comes with free beer and pretzels.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to do presentations, and I was lazy, so I said, well, why don't you just do Q&A? And that way I don't have to prepare anything.
Oh, good Lord.
And that's exactly what happened.
Like that. Oh, my God.
Great.
I mean, it's people that always ask questions. I get to give my opinion. Makes Harman Marketing a little worried, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's wizard level. That's wizard level planning, though.
A beer and a microphone would make anybody nervous, regardless of whose marketing firm they were with. All right. And Mr. Cordell, thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Glad to be here. Find me on Twitter, _AV_pro. Find me on YouTube, youtube.com/highfidelity, HIPHIDELITY. Thanks, man.
Very good. Thank you. Absolutely. I've mentioned ISE a couple times, Integrated Systems Europe. If you're going next week, stop by. Oh, good Lord. Several different booths. We have one in Hall 7. We're also going to be we're partnering up with a couple of folks, and it's kind of neat. It's bringing people together. The folks at AV Magazine, which is a publication out of the UK, also the guys at Daily Do. So Daily Do does not have a booth. They're going to be a couple different other ones, Adrian and the guys. AV Magazine, though, they have one in Hall 6. Ours is in Hall 7. We're doing all of our podcasts in at AV Magazine's booth, including one with Mr. Zealy. We're going to be doing on network security. Oh my gosh, that one is something else. Yeah, we got a lot of big hitters, including Paul, talking about network security. We'll be doing a daily wrap-up show at about 5:45 local time, which is roughly, if my math is correct, 11:45 Eastern. here in the States. Also, we've got 2 different tweet ups. One is in the AV Magazine booth on Tuesday from noon until 3. The other one is at the HD Base T booth on Wednesday from 4 to 6. So yeah, all kinds of stuff. Just go by and come by. If you're not going to ISE, follow us. AVNation TV is the Twitter. You can go by the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You'll find this program, tons of others. George Tucker and I got to sit down with Dr. Michio Kaku, and that was very cool. He's previewing his speech at ISE. You'll also find our list of underwriters, and you may ask yourself what an underwriter is. It's people who think that what we do is important for the industry, and they help us do things like go to ISE. Milestone is one of them. Thank you very much. And we had a brand new one this week, which is kind of cool. Guys from a bunch of really great guys and gals from Ireland, a company called Display Note. So check that out if you would please. Avnation.tv. Avnation.tv. For those of you going to ISE, we will see you in Amsterdam next week. For those of you who aren't, go ahead and watch. All kinds of cool stuff will be coming out of the ISE show. So thank you all so much. Avnation.tv. It's all the time we have for AV Week.